Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to the Rules as Code RaC Guild Townhall number 19. We're live. It's evening here in New Zealand, but it's morning where you are, Till. We're very pleased to have Till Behnke. Have I said that right?
It's a Behnke, but very close. Very close.
Behnke, right. Very pleased to have Till with us this evening. I've been very excited about this because I've been looking all over your website, guys. The presentation this evening is from legislation to machine executable decision logic. This is going to be a deep dive into work that these guys are doing around rules mapping, which is an exciting area that the Rules as Code Guild is very into. So I think you're going to get lots of great questions at the end of your presentation, and we're really pleased that you and your colleagues, because I believe there's a few of you here this evening, have been able to join us and hopefully will join up with the RaC Guild and continue to contribute over a period of time as well. We're certainly keen to contribute back to your project. This is something that needs to happen in the world, and we're glad that you're around. So without further ado, time for Q&A afterwards. Please take it away, Till.
Yeah, thank you so much for this intro. Thank you so much for having us. Before I briefly introduce the three of us, I'll hit the share button just to make sure that this works.
Cool.
It does, I think, but now I can't see anyone. Now I can. Before I start, a brief words. So with me today is Stefan. Stefan Rath is our VP for Law as Code and International in our organization. And he's a lawyer, I'm not. And he's much closer to being a native English speaker than I am. So Stefan, I hope you jump in when I'm looking for words. And then is Max Senges. Max is a professor at the University of Arts, but he's a techie for the last 2 or 3 decades. Max, correct me if I'm wrong. And he's really an expert in things that we are now diving deep into, open sourcing, looking to create open standards and really not just be a software developing company with a commercial center, but really providing bits and pieces to an open ecosystem and infrastructure from lawmaking to execution of rules. And we are, in some terms, we are quite a young organization. So the Rulemapping Group was founded 2024 in summer, so not even 2 years ago. But there was a now I'm looking for the word, the professor who came up with the rule mapping visualization method, Stefan Breidenbach, who's also the main shareholder of this company now. He has started working with his student. He's a professor of law, or used to be in Germany. Now he's retired. And he founded a company 20 years ago to transform the subsumption logic into a software system. To visualize the legal logic and to allow lawyers without software developers to visually create rule maps and created a software which helps, and that was a long time before AI came into the game, a software which helped then to execute rules in a legal context, in whatever legal context, really. So, and with AI coming in, the team saw that now the rule mapping method and the visualization can be kind of the missing link when using AI in automating legal decisions. So first, it breaks down the whole set of rules that is needed for a legal case check into the last level of detail, so that you can basically have 5,000 micro decisions in a complicated decision process, and only use AI in 5% of those micro decisions, because the rest is automated by legal logic or by data. So in tax and social security calculations, it's mostly data driven. You don't need AI. And so it came about that the German government saw this prototypes 3 years ago, how rule mapping and AI can help to fully automate without hallucination legal decisions. The rule mapping visualization helps the human in the loop to have full transparency on how the AI is working. Okay, that's very abstract now. We founded the company 2 years ago, this one, and the German government is one of our shareholders. And the current status is that the German government that came into work last March for the first time has a digital ministry, and they published a government modernization strategy. And one of the 4 main pillars is the digitization of law, and they call it law as code. And they have a plan, a quite ambitious time plan to roll out law as code with our rule mapping methodology and our open source tools to transfer existing law into machine-readable formats, to establish a standardized format to establish a library where all existing law is in a machine-readable format, and then allow auto updates in the future. That's yeah, and I think I'll dive in the few slides. I'm not going to show 20 slides. I'm probably going to show 5 or 6 and try to end at 9:20, so we can go into questions and then dive deeper, really. Is there anything else on the agenda before I now just keep on talking? No? Okay, super. Okay, because I already started explaining bits and pieces that are really good if we look at least this ecosystem slide. So you see that the rule map is a decision tree, and it's not the proprietary decision tree logic, but it is just a visualization of the subsumption logic. So every set of rules when being applied in case checking is by lawyers transferred into a checking structure where the main question stands in front. So can the permission for building this factory can be granted, yes or no? And then you have a lot of levels of little things you have to check. And you normally start with the last bit of detail outside. And then, if you want to build a factory, but there's rare species living there in the habitat, then this micro decision turns red. And basically 80% of the whole check you don't have to do anymore, because just by the legal logic, everything turns red, and you just have to check for 3 exemptions. Yeah, and we look at 1 or 2 examples just now. But basically our work and software tools work on 2 ends. One is when designing law, and one is when executing law. And in bureaucracy, at least in Germany, we have the biggest problems with bureaucracy when applying law, when executing law in case checking. So, and bad design of law is sometimes, or is always, one of the reasons. But the biggest reason is really that we are transferring, for the last 25 years, the digitization of government has been taking analog law and digitizing it in projects to have a software solution to execute it, to use it in everyday life. And those software projects take months or years even, and are normally investments of hundreds of thousands or millions of euros. And once the software is ready to be used, most of the time regulation has changed already. So it's one of the biggest challenges to be up to date with bureaucratic software, whether you have this software running in government agencies or whether you have it running in compliance in private sector companies. You develop software and you translate rules into IT logic and you program software. And once the software is ready, the rules have changed usually.
Till?
And with the visual method, where you don't need software developers, but you have lawyers, we call them legal engineers, who can drag and drop and update the set of rules and then publish it on a library that is public. You can basically auto-update all of the software where those set of rules are applied. So
Till, I hate to interrupt you. If you could click on presenting, we see your screen much bigger. It's a little small.
Okay, danke, Max.
Perfect.
I think it's still probably not about reading all of the details in the boxes, but rather looking at the ecosystem scheme. So we have now decided to develop this on the left-hand side, our tool for legislation, for rule building as an open source tool. And we will hand it over to the German government end of this quarter, beginning of next quarter. And with this editor, you'll be able to model law in this visual way, but at the same time translate it into legal text. And this will be open source. What's not open source is our AI integration, where we can now use existing law or even just political concepts and have at the press of a button a first version of a rule map, and at the press of a button have a first draft of legal text. This is not the execution part at the end that makes the biggest difference, but this is the infrastructure pieces that help the government in the future to publish law in a machine-readable format from the beginning on. So what you see here, this is basically the core that we are developing as an open standard. There's a 200-page specification of how this file format is going to look like, so that not only our legislation editor and our execution machine, but basically anyone can work with this open standard for machine-readable law. And we're publishing this end of the quarter. Right now, we have all of this in our system, so it's happening already for the last 2 or 3 years with AI in execution, and for the last 15 years in Germany, law has been modeled in this way. Not all law, but like very complex law reform projects. So it used to be a proprietary software, and we used to do consulting with it. And now we're publishing all of this on a platform, and this part is open source. So the whole law modeling thing is open. Now, once you have all the rules and all the subsumption context information, like court rulings and additional information you need to apply the law in a case checking context, you can then integrate it as a decision automation module in any environment that you might have. So we are not focused on really delivering end-to-end solutions to German government units or to companies. We can, but we'd rather have an existing infrastructure of like a digital process in a compliance process or in a government agency that grants permissions, And whenever there's a legal decision happening that in the past is asking a clerk, a human, to read a 50-page environment expertise and then basically do the legal check whether the permission can be granted or not with pen and paper and in their head. We can be the layer between the LLM and the process automation. So whenever you would like to just ask an LLM about what this expertise, how it should be ruled, AI is hallucinating when you ask big questions to big case data. And breaking it down to the last level of detail just helps to get the correct answer, and it helps the human to understand how the AI is suggesting these micro decisions. I go to one or two examples, and then we can come back with questions regarding the whole ecosystem, how we're working with it. So the left-hand side, legislation is something that's going to go open source, and our commercial business is really automation of decisions with data, with legal logic, and also with AI in complex cases. We can also come back to the rule mapping methodology if you're interested in this. So you see, if we have a government administration unit or a compliance department of a corporation as a client, then they have use cases where they have thousands of times per day sometimes to check a similar kind of case. A case can be my example is a building permission, building a factory, or just building a house as a private individual. You have an application set of documents, and you want to have those checked against the law, against the set of rules. So what we then do one time, instead of a software development project, is we have our legal engineers model these rule maps from the norms that are relevant for this permission process. And this used to be a manual process in the last 15 years in our company. You do it one time, and it's probably 90% faster and cheaper, or 90% faster and cheaper instead of software development. But the biggest change is that when the set of rules is changing, you can just drag and drop the change in the future. You don't have to reprogram your software. So you do this one time, and then you can just upload and interpret the case data with AI. AI is really good at interpreting even the voice files of birds living where you want to build your house or your factory. But AI is not good then checking this case data against a big set of rules. So, and that's, where the case comes in, and you can now upload hundreds of thousands of cases against this set of rules that you have digitized once. And that's that's basically, I think, I've explained the model, and we come back to questions. And here's one example: the Digital Service Act. It's a European law that allows private individuals that if they see illegal content on social media and they've asked the platform to delete it, or if basically Instagram is blocking your account without giving you a reason, you can go to an independent third-party legal institution to have it checked. And the DSA, the Digital Service Act, has governments certifying these independent what is it? Is it litigation, Stefan? So there's independent bodies. And we helped the only German certified DSA checking institution to fully automate their process. So people would upload screenshots and say, this is an illegal, illegal content in a conversation or just as a post. So we have mapped for them the whole set of, Stefan, was ist Strafrecht?
Criminal law.
Yeah, the whole set of criminal law. And so this is a huge decision tree, thousands of nodes, and also all of the terms and conditions of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Those are the platforms currently regulated by this German DSA body. So people would upload a screenshot and say what their problem is, and we fully automate the checking against the whole set of criminal law and terms and conditions of the platforms, and then suggest to a lawyer who's working for this independent organization a solution, a decision on how on whether this content is illegal and needs to be deleted or not. And the DSA forces the platforms to always pay for this. So basically, it's an independent institution. Users upload content, decisions are prepared, and usually a lawyer would need 2 to 4 hours for one case. And the full automation brings it down to the lawyer just checking the suggestions that are made by the automated process, which brings it down from 4 hours to 15 minutes per case. And we have a 99.9 correct answer rate, and have checked. Yeah, we've used this methodology without AI for the last 15 years in millions of cases, and now with AI in hundreds of thousands of cases. So we can see the decisive difference between asking AI alone or asking AI or using AI in when a deterministic rule-based system is in the lead, which brings the correct answer rate up from 85% from an LLM on its own to 99.9, which is in a range where you would only start to think about applying it in a government context. I think this is more detailed to the same examples, and I would go back to the overview and say what kind of questions can we dive deeper into, and then obviously I will hope that Max and Stefan jump in and have some other words. Thanks.
Thank you, Till. That was an awesome run through what you do, and your English is far better than my German. So
Thanks for that.
there you go. There you go. So I have questions, but I'm sure there are other people in the room that have many questions for the rule mapping team. Julie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm just curious to understand, like, the legal engineers in Germany, do they is there now an incentive for all, you call them legal engineers, lawyers that draft up legislation? Are they incentivized to use this tool along the way to actually draft the legislation that way? And then does it immediately go, does it start this way, or do they still draft it their normal way? And then they use this tool to produce the rule maps, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just trying to understand how this works in practice.
Yeah. So in the past and up until now, you can say this is used project-based, and there is legislation reforms that are really complex. So for example, if you look at tax law, in Germany, legislators have lost the grip on the whole thing. So even legislators in the Ministry of Finance in Germany, with a lot of consultants, don't have the whole body of exemptions in a format where they can just machine support it, compute it, and be aware of existing law when designing new law. So, and when cases as complex as this came up in the past, they would call our professor and the small team that existed in this company to support with their tools, but as a consultancy. And now the government has made a decision to source these tools and to educate legislators. There is a new, it's called Center for Legislation. So it's an academy. In Germany, if you study law, you have maybe your first job in the ministry and you're asked to write law. But there is no training for legislators in Germany. So this is changing right now. They're building up this Center for Legislation, and they will be teaching this methodology so that it's not only our 20 to 30 legal engineers that you can rent, or hire, or project on a project basis get in, but really be educated to use the tools. And also we're like developing now our proprietary software into this open source bit. So, and this editor, you can look at the in an open beta. It's on rulemapping.org. So you can sign up now and play around with it. And it is not like here, just a rule map, but it's got both sides. So you have text editor and you have the rule maps and you have norm referencing so that every node is referenced to a piece of writing. So what we are working right now is our AI tools that support legislation to come into this. So the government will use this as open source and free to do it manually, but they can book our AI tools to just have political concept papers or existing law transferred into a computable format, to then use the tools to compare it, existing law, and change concepts, or in case of new legislation, to use a political concept, bring it into the modeling version, and also have our tools to write formal legal text. So, and we've not only been coming in to help projects in the past, but we found out in those 15 years where on a project basis we supported lawmaking, that the visual way of designing law is really good to start with from scratch, because you have a visual understanding of the logic. So the quality of law in Germany is not so good. You know, you have a lot of was sind Widersprüche?
Inconsistencies, discrepancies.
You have redundancies, and you have one law stating one thing and another law contradicting it, right?
Yeah.
So, and the visualization is helping also teams to work. So legislation is a team effort, right? And looking at the visual logic structure helps you in teamwork. So basically, we are hoping, or we are helping the German government now to go from the writing text, and then later we get it into a rule map and have computer support in optimizing it, to actually draft law from the start in a visual way. And now starting not by hand building the tree, but using our AI to just get a concept paper in and get a first draft of the tree and also a first draft of the formal legal text.
I have a follow-up question quickly. When it's all there, like, will it be hosted somewhere where like everyone can access this? Like, because I feel also like often legal text is so hard to understand for, you know, any normal non-legal person, and I feel like even from that perspective, it would be easier for others to be able to access these maps. Or, you know, also I guess there's also this question about, you know, if someone types something in ChatGPT, can that access the information, and hopefully there will be less hallucination as well. So, you know, like so that people actually get the right answers. Is that part of it as well?
Yeah, so what we do is, one thing is the German government will run this on-premise on their own servers. As law, once it's decided by parliament, is a very public piece of information. Law in draft mode and in the political discussion and debate is very, what's the word? Confidential. Yeah. So that's why they're gonna run, the legislators are gonna work on premise in a secure environment, and it's not all public. Once it's published, it's when after parliament has decided on the law, and after the ministry has said this is the digital twin that we want to publish. At the same time, we are running this free tool now. Because there's also, you know, insurance companies or like anyone can use the rule map builder and also AI tools with it. For the law that we have digitized and that is published, we are just starting to build a library where we put on all the POCs all the use cases we've digitized, and not only law, but also like fully automatable decision process trees for all kinds of use cases. And we have hundreds from Germany, but we're right now building a few for other EU countries. Everything that is public, we will publish and allow a chatbot to ask questions to those rule maps. So the big difference to a normal chatbot is that the answers will not be AI-driven, probabilistic, but the answers from this chatbot will be, the chatbot is asking a question to the deterministic rule map. And then it's just the interface, really. And yeah, we're publishing this, and I think Stefan and Max are able to say that this is probably, 12 weeks from now, that we're starting this public library.
Wow. Awesome. Nadia, you have a question from New Zealand.
Kia ora. This has been really, really exciting to see this. I've been out of the rules as code world for about 5 years, and now I'm about to re-enter it. So it's very exciting to see where it's got to in that time that I've not been paying as much attention. This is so, I'm so pleased that the German government's taken up this opportunity. I was just curious what situations you might have seen where errors in the law or these inconsistencies have been brought to people's attention, and then that's impacted changes in the law. Have you seen those situations?
Yeah, so my co-managing director here, Tilo, he's the lawyer tech person who's been running this company of 15 people for the last 16, 17 years. He is still involved in all of the projects where we act as consultants to federal government and to states. We have in Germany, we have 16 states, and they all do their own law or their own versions of the same law, which is a big problem in digitization. So I guess we should have him in a follow-up if interested, because he can come with all sorts of examples. So during the last 18 months, I've been in the meetings with the new digital ministry of the federal government, and they, for example, have on the set of rules below the laws, is Verwaltungsvorschriften. It's administrational rules, regulation, sub-law that gives you, because law is abstract enough to not be precise enough, and it's a political, probably makes sense, or that's how it works, and I think internationally. So the Verwaltungsvorschriften in Germany, on the federal level, we have 20,000 Verwaltungsvorschriften. And the biggest problem is that there are contradictions and redundancies. Now we've prepared a POC for one area of these to see how we can combine the redundancies into an abstract part of your regulation, so that it's not regulated 100 times in a little bit different ways, which is redundancy, but also contradiction at times. So, and the government's goal is within this legislature, within this term, to get rid of 20% of these Verwaltungsvorschriften, and we just propose the project outline how to do this during the next 12 months.
And maybe I can just add one example where it's like we were like doing it actually with European law. So there's like right, so you have these European regulations, and then there's like they typically need to be implemented into national or domestic laws and regulations. And so it's like sometimes it's on federal level, sometimes on state level, and we are just like working with one state, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern in the north, and they are checking then there's like if their drafts are actually just like fully compliant with like the EU regulation, right? So then you can see if it's like it's executed properly and is showing you the inconsistencies, and then it's like you can actually update it accordingly. It's just like even drafting you a better legal text, and that is something that we're just like doing on an ongoing basis for that state.
Thank you. Good on track, Flock? Tell me my
Hi, thank you. It's Edward from GuruTruck.
Edward, thank you.
We work with computable laws and the verification of computable laws using formal methods. And so we have a mixture of, let's say, lawyers in our company, of software developers and mathematicians. First of all, thank you for the interesting presentation. And actually, Nadia has just asked a almost identical question that I was going to ask, which was how you dealt with inconsistencies and ambiguities. And I think here maybe it's important to clarify whether you're, let's say, digitalizing new laws or whether you're digitalizing existing laws. So we ourselves, for example, have been working with the European road transport legislation. And so we developed some software at the moment in, let's say, in road transport legislation. Trucks have tachographs inside them, which is a little bit like a computer. And based on the driving and rest times, we download this tachograph. You make an analysis of the data for the last 56 days. And automatically we say whether there have been violations or not. And member states are using this software. However, when we developed this software, we found that there were several sections of the law that had ambiguities or inconsistencies. And so we were saying to public administration, which configuration would you like, option A, B, or C of this article, because it's not consistent. So, and we had big pushback from member states who were saying, look, we shouldn't be the ones deciding this. And in the end, nobody wants to decide on these things. So I think in a perfect world, what you're saying sounds great if the law itself is capable of being digitalized, but quite often, particularly with existing law, maybe the law isn't perfect. So I just wondered how you dealt with that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the example and also for the question, because we now talked a bit about legislation and how to digitize law, but really to get to the execution part, There's a lot of configuration, a lot of additional information. We call it the subsumption context that needs to be added and decided on because the law is not specific enough. Yeah, just generally, it's not specific enough. So between having a digital body of the law, it's just the skeleton, really. Then you have those Verwaltungsvorschriften, the sub-law regulation. You have then the state in Germany on the federal level, the state or even communal regulation to be able to process a case in a public service agency in a city in Germany. You need to take federal law and add all these sub-law regulations. And for example, they are in a 1,000 micro-decision process, you have probably 50 decisions where there is court rulings that have to be considered. And court rulings also change. There is a higher court ruling something different. And this is a change to the decision tree as much as a regulation change on EU level sometimes. So we need to add all this context information. But I always say, compared to coding this in software and bringing software developers to the table and going from, from a legal specification into an IT specification, developing it as code, and then finding out there is a new court ruling or a change in EU law that needs to adapt the code. And in our case, we just go to the respective node and say there has been a court ruling, so we have to add this and change this. And this goes into a library. And this is a standardized file format. So everyone who's using the regulated logic in their software system gets an auto update every time we make a change in the library, not just a legal change, but a change. And last level of detail, one example is with all this configuration, you still have the government agency in the city who's making the decision, and they have to deal with edge cases. And that means there is something or somebody authorized in making a decision case by case, obviously, or generally how we deal in our city with edge cases that are not specified by the law and by the sub-law regulation. So in those automation projects, we go into the agency unit or our partners who use our software, like consultancy companies, use our tools. They go into and interview the directors of this agency and say, how do you want to deal with these cases right now? And then the big benefit of the visual methodology in software comes in, because we can teach the agency employees, the customer, on how to do the simple adaptations themselves. And last part of this is in Germany, the 16 states are like very similar in their local application of federal law, but they're different. And there is a law in Germany that says if one of the states has digitized a process, for example, how to tax dogs. It's a real example we're working with, yeah? So Hamburg is developing a software on taxation of dogs. And then Stuttgart, the state of Baden-Württemberg, is by law forced to reuse the software that Hamburg has developed. But in reality, they develop a new software, because they can always make the case and say, before I change the software from Hamburg, it's cheaper for me to develop a new software. And with this setup, for the first time, we now have a case where it's economically beneficial to reuse a configuration of a regulated digital process instead of developing something new. So that's what I see as the biggest benefits, is the updates by drag and drop, and to take a case from one state to another and just have a few knots changed, and you can reuse the digital solution.
And maybe I can add one thing. So there's like, because when you look at the decision tree, right, and it's like from a lawyer's perspective, right, it's very different than any type of workflow tool that is like, it's like then goes through the decision tree from this, like, let's say left to right, right, and you always have to take a binary decision. There's like the lawyers typically think from the end, right? So in our tool works from the end. So we are just like actually starting at the detail level, which then also allows that you can, for example, work with discretion or just like undefined legal terms, because you can actually describe how this discretion should be applied, right? And like because you're giving certain rules, how this discretion should be applied or this undefined legal terms should be interpreted, and then you just go backwards, right? It's like, and then our system is also not binary. It can also just not turn yellow or green. It's like red or green, but it can also turn yellow, right? So therefore, if you want actually the human to decide is like a certain point inside the decision tree, you can also do this because you say, for example, that this like discretion should be not it's like applied by this like a machine, right? But it should be this like applied by a human. Then it's like you can set this up accordingly, and then you have this like that decision tree. You see, here it's yellow, here I need to decide, and then there's like the person in the government is just like going in there and it's like is deciding specifically on that knot, and it's like changes the entire decision.
Thank you, Stefan. Matthew, you've had your hand up for a while.
Hello. Yeah. Fascinating stuff. We've had Sprint reach out to us, and they were putting us in touch with you, so I wanted to come and see this. But when Edward started talking, I thought, oh, he's asking my question. That's it, I've finished. But it didn't get an answer, or at least not an answer that we would be happy with as lawyers. Because you can say to the point, and this may be different in Germany, it may be different in other civil law countries, it may be one of these differences with Commonwealth countries, common law countries, but what we have to explain to policy people all the time is that once you've enacted the law, it doesn't belong to the government anymore. It then is to be decided what it means by the courts. So you can, where you find inconsistencies and ambiguities in existing legislation, what I gathered you were saying is you go to the people who implement it and you ask them, which way do you want us to go on this? Which is fine in that, yes, every tax office in the country, every social security office in every country is already digitized. They're already working out what they think the law means and how they can have a computerized process to deal with it. But there's that difference. There's the question of whether you can in some way label the input that is from the legislation, the input that is from the case law, the input that is from the administrators saying, well, yeah, this piece of legislation is ambiguous, only a court would decide. But in order to live and do something with this, we have to make our decision, and our decision is go this way. So, and then when you mention EU legislation is notoriously vague and open to interpretation, and the European Court of Justice is notoriously famous for deciding that things mean things that no one ever would have dreamed they meant by just reading them. So you have this, you can say we have mapped logically what we think the EU directive means. We've mapped logically what this particular country's implementation means, and we think they fit. But you need something to represent the fact that a citizen can say, yeah, that's your opinion that the EU means that. The European Court of Justice, if I don't like your interpretation, I can take a court case, I can go to the European Court of Justice, I think I'm right, I think they'll back me, and then these regulations will be held to be incompatible. Is that colouring of the different types of input? Is that something you've got?
Well, thanks, and I completely agree. That's how we look at it, and we are not changing any of this, right? So this is the political will, is that the EU directives are really open for interpretation, and law is. But as you say, at the end there's an agency. They have to make a decision how to deal with it. Otherwise, they cannot process any of the applications that we receive. So in this view, we are just, I would say, working on an alternative way of digitizing compared to usual software development.
Right, but the question is, how do you flag that some of what you've got is from the law, some of what you've got is from your legal engineers just saying, we think this is it. Some of what you've got is from the agency saying, yeah, someone's got to decide, we're going this way. How do you flag, for when you say transparency, the person who is faced with a decision, you've made a decision about me based on this. I want to be able, I have to be able to challenge it. That's my right. I have to know how you got there. I have to know which bits of this code came from which sources, because they're challenged in different ways. Yeah,
I completely agree. But the software example is the right one. So we have a customer, and the customer is either the agency, or it is a let's say it's a civil society organization that is legally helping citizens. That can be our customer. And the customer is calling us just like a software developing company and say, I want a digital tool to help me, have an opinion on legal cases. And then this customer, I'm asking questions on how they want the machine to work, really. So if it's a government agency, and the agency must decide how to deal with edge cases. And so just like when you are a software development company and somebody asks you to implement a piece of software that helps you with your regulated processes, you develop the solution and then you go back to your customer. And the Ministry of Finance is one of our customers. And when we model the changes to income tax, then we show the rule map to them. It's better readable than computer code. And lawyers can look at it and say, yeah, I think you modeled it in the right way. And we can show in the nod, this is taken one-to-one from the law, and this is to be executable. This is what our legal engineers have interpreted. And then, it's like an acceptance moment in a software project, is then that the customer says, okay, this is how I want it. And in the tax example, the Ministry of Finance always comes with 3,000 income tax statements as test data. And I know how the biggest German tax software company is working with this, because they get BPMN briefings with every law change for income tax. They do a 100-page BPMN visualization, which is absolute nonsense to get grip on this, and written text on the law changes, and they don't even really look at this. They have their software developing teams, and they program with their software long enough so that the 3,000 test cases get exactly with euros and send the results that the government wants. And then they say, our software is ready for the new law. So in this respect, we are not changing any of this. It's a methodology that helps us be faster, be more adaptive, reactive to changes, and to be human readable and machine readable at the same time, which creates a lot of benefits. But we're not solving and I think it shouldn't be our role to come up with or forcing politicians to be more precise in lawmaking, because
No.
There is transparency.
What
But
I'm
maybe I can
asking is, and what seems to be within grasp from what you're saying, is a way to, when you're looking at the different nodes, how, when you say, oh, we update this node because there's been this case, is there a way of flagging that you have, that input is from a case, this input is from an agency, this input is from a legal expert, because they're all challengeable in different ways?
That's
just to flagging those
that's
things
great.
where they come from.
The great question, I'll make it really short. I would say, I don't know if I've got screenshot examples here. Thilo would have some examples and could talk to this. But the beautiful thing is, if you have it in a machine-readable format, we can, at the press of a button, create reports and saying, this has been the one-to-one translation of the law. And this has been the configuration, and this is our everyday work. It's getting layers of configuration more to all the open questions, so that at the end the case can be automatically checked. Yeah, I mean, this is existing in our database for every single rule map we ever build.
Awesome.
So there will be ways. Give us a use case, and I think.
But you can also see it in every decision node. You can see this, like, why it has been decided in a certain way, right? So there's like you can see this has been this, like, the law is like, it's an undefined term, so therefore there's like, we have used this like Supreme Court decision to just like interpret the term, and there's like then it was still unclear, and there's like it was just like some common practice of this specific government agency that then decided to just like apply it this way. So you can see this entire in every node.
Whether you've got that indication of where it came from.
Exactly. In every decision node, you can see it, and then it's later on also there's like, actually, if the government decides to just like have an automated, let's say it's like a permit, or there's like a rejection report, right? Then it will also be in there. So that is like actually everything that the citizen needs to know in order to also sue against it if necessary, right, is in this report, and it's like on every decision node you can see it in detail.
Right.
Guys, I just want to, for the recording, for people that need to, log off after an hour of watching this, I just want to put in the chat here and mention on the recording that you can come to RaC Guild, racguild.org, and you can join the Slack group and you can get involved in this conversation and all of the possible reactions to the rule mapping methodology, and get involved in the conversation in the Slack group. So this conversation is going to continue, because it looks like everybody wants to stay around. Alfred's got questions. Nadia's got a point. Maddie's got a point directly for this. So we're going to stick around. You can stick around for the rest of this recording. But if you need to log off now, go to racguild.org and you'll find the recording of this whole space. And you will also find the entry to the Slack group. So we will continue. Matty, you have a response specifically to this point.
Yeah, that's sorry. I didn't want to bypass everyone in the line, but hi, Till. Yeah, just to the point made on what I would rephrase as wanting traceability in the case of rule mapping, node level, which would be in open fiscal parlance variable level, or any rules as code system, really one specific entry. I think it's useful to have comments on that, but and I'm not 100% sure that was the question that was asked, but I understood it as wanting traceability down to that level. And while this can be provided when the source is code and there is a version control system, usually what we have is that in the end, the entire model is going to be validated by the agency that pushes it out. So in this case, the entire rule map in its specific state will be validated by the agency that pushes it. And so having traceability at node level is interesting for agencies' internal reporting, but is not necessarily useful for users. And so this idea of being able to trace whether this information is coming from here or there is more the sausage making, but not necessarily what concerns the people eating the sausage, so the people consuming the rule map. So I just wanted to share that that point and say that from my perspective, this is only mildly relevant. In the case of rule mapping, the way I understand it, there is also an authenticity hash that is provided for the entirety of the rule map. So that might be also something you want to, I'm not sure I fully got that, so maybe that might be an interesting point to explain. I don't know.
Yeah. Martin,
Can we put
nice
a pin in
to-
that? Can we put a pin in that? And just, I missed out Alfred, who had his hand up next. So you might have two questions that are similar to each other. Alfred.
Yeah, hi guys. It's a really great presentation, and I'm sorry I'm off camera. I'm actually doing my night walk, but maybe we park my question. I will ask it, but it's a very different theme and perhaps relatively boring to the theme that's being discussed now. But I'm particularly keen to learn more about the open standards that you guys have been working on and looking to release, and basically some sort of high-level questions around custodianship. What has inspired or informed that open schema? Have you been collaborating with other rule-making platforms to look to establish an international standard? Just sort of questions around that, and we can take it offline, and whether it be on Slack or otherwise. But I was sort of keen to understand a little more around what you guys are thinking in that space.
Yeah. Thanks. So I think I can combine the two, because Matti, thanks a lot for pointing out the hashing and the authorization of rule maps that is planned. So in Germany, the government has a innovation funding unit that is our investor, and they've started a law as code initiative that is separate from our work, our everyday work. And they are starting a consultation process inside the EU now, but they are talking to the OECD, and they are really focusing on getting in these consultations everything in that's existing. And I think it will go beyond the EU. Whilst we are focusing on getting our thing to work, and our customers, the German government, so we are asking, what are your requirements for this to be an open standard for the German public sector? So we just focus on our implementation, and this is in a better state, and then we're developing it every week. So at the same time, the German government is working with the EU and with the OECD now, starting a process to come up with a standardization framework. I think the working title is Online Legal Reasoning Framework, and they just we will be following this. And obviously, we want to be interoperable with whatever becomes an international standard. So, we're just looking now to come up with an open specification for these files that the German public sector can work with in the first version. But obviously, we want to be interoperable with existing systems. We want to be look for interfacing with Open Fisca, and we in the long run as a private company will not be the ones who govern an open standard. So this is what I want to say, that we focus on now delivering on what our clients want, and at the same time open sourcing those bits and pieces where we think this is really important for adoption, to be a contributor to an open ecosystem, but always focused on the projects we are trying to enable right now. And then we always look what independent government bodies, international bodies are deciding, and I think they will run the governance long-term on those open standards. So we have to look to be to fit in at some point. And this process is happening close enough so that we believe, we look that our implementation makes sense beyond Germany from the start, and that's why we're looking for pilot projects and use cases from all around the world. And one part of this is that the specification we're working on now is already foreseeing a governance for every single rule map. So that's what Matti pointed out, that we don't know how the German government will do this. Right now, we have only single customers like the financial ministry, but we're starting to discuss right now how they will sign off on rule maps to make them official before they go into the library.
Thank you, Till. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Great answer. And I'm just an acknowledgement, and good to hear that there's some peak bodies out there that are looking to, drive that open standard. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. This has to be the last question for the evening, the morning. Well, in Germany, you could keep going, right? Here in Australia, it's getting a bit late for us. So Nadia, last question. You have the honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also a night owl, so it doesn't bother me. So my question was, and I think you started touching on it, and it's a little bit, I'm really interested in feedback loops. So when people are interacting with the tools and how data is gathered around that interaction, the decisions that are made as a result of these rules, and how that's fed back into the process of improving those rules.
And also into the AI, which is proprietary. It's not commons property, right? So every interaction is actually feeding the AI, and it's extracting that data.
Yeah, this last bit is that our system is LLM agnostic. So we can combine the rule mapping system with any given large language model, and to be precise, with the upcoming generation of small language models, they will be good enough for us to have exact results. So, and this means we are already implementing our system on premise in government servers. That have no, like, for example, with Mistral, the French European open source AI, Gen AI model. So there's no data going anywhere if you don't want it, right? You're not feeding AI models if you don't want to. That's very important. And with small language models coming up, this will be able to be run on your laptop. Or a mobile device if necessary, right? But if I got your question correct, Nadia, then it's about when processing hundreds of thousands of cases against certain set of rules, we learn a lot. Yeah, we can learn a lot, or our customer can learn a lot, and that's true. And we have done quite some work on business intelligence for singular customers. So this is not standardized in any way yet, but when we're implementing a digital decision process, then we can configure the business intelligence around it. So. And obviously, this is in discussion with German government now, looking at the whole law as code ecosystem, that we learn a lot about where law is too ambiguous or where it's contradictory, so that it's always going to court. Yeah, it's always this knot in our rule map where people end up at the court. Yes, I think there's a lot of potential when, as a government, rolling this out to create better law in the end. But I'm always saying we work on two ends. We on bureaucracy acceleration. I don't know if it's a good term, because we don't want to accelerate bureaucracy in terms of having more unnecessary bureaucracy, but we want to accelerate the execution, and we want better regulation. And both are important. The great thing is we can already accelerate processes with bad regulation, and at the same time slowly improve regulation. So this is not either or, and we don't have to wait until we have better law. We can start accelerating processes.
We would be waiting a long time, Till, if that was the case, correct? This has been fascinating and incredibly worthwhile. I hope I think everybody here more or less is in the Slack channel. Apart from our friends from Rulemapping, please do join up and continue the conversation in there. For everybody else, thank you for joining us on YouTube. racguild.org is where you go for more information, and the recording of this will be available there, as well as on the channel itself. Our meetings are the first Wednesday of every month, and they're always like this. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and moving the world forward at a time when law and rules are becoming even more important for us all to get along. So thank you very much, Till, Stefan, and your team. Really appreciate you being here this evening. And we'll look forward to the next one and seeing you on Slack in the meantime. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for sharing the evening.